Next up, we'd like to invite Dr. Santrupt Mishra to the stage for his opening presentation. Thank you so much, Dr. Mishra.
Good evening. First of all, let me start with a somber note. I know David Tauber is somewhere here. David, can you wave your hand, please? Yeah, my sincere condolences to you and your fellow Texans for the unfortunate event of death of so many innocent people. And I would also like to say that I know some of our colleagues from the industry who usually have been attending conferences with us, but due to some health problem or the other are not with us. I would like all of you to join me in saying a word of prayer silently for their better health, and that's what I want to start with. Thank you very much, Anil Kumar ji, Organizing Committee, for inviting me to be here. Every time I come to a Carbon Black conference, first of all, I see always a mini United Nations here because there are people from so many countries that are here together. And that's very inspiring. It's also inspiring to have our partners, suppliers, inspiring to have our customers. And it's always inspiring to have our very able competitors, because unless you have competitive benchmarking, you have no progress in life. And I was even fascinated that Vincent and Mr. Natarajan were debating in terms of competitive benchmarking, saying who has attended more conferences. I think that's always delightful to hear. And I remember one interesting story that I want to start with, that there was this master who was teaching in a classroom to his students, and he brought a glass jar, and he put some pebbles in the glass jar and asked his class, is this jar full? So many students say, yeah, it's full. Then he brought some sand and he put into the glass jar and shook it, and the sand obviously settled between the pebbles, there were crevices. Then he said, do you think this jar is full? They said, yeah, that's full. Then he brought some water and poured into the jar, and the water obviously was kind of absorbed by the sand. Then he said, is this full? A student said, yeah, now it looks like full. Then he brought a glass of wine like this, and he poured that into the jar, and even some wine also got kind of sucked in. So he said, look, there are some lessons in this whole story. And he said the pebbles are, that the first ones that I put into the jar are like the most important things in our life. Our health, our family. And after that, the smaller pebbles or the sand I put are the less important things. Like perhaps having a car or, having a fancy holiday or something like that. And the water I put are even the least important things in life. So the life is like a jar where you're going to decide what's most important, less important, and least important. And if you put your life full of least important things, then your life gets too crowded and you cannot have the important things in life. So a very smart student at the back stood up and said, well, professor, master, you said all the important things. You talked about the pebbles, you talked about the sand, you talked about everything else, water. But you didn't mention, what is wine? He said the role of wine in life is that no matter how full life is, there is always scholarship tells us that do not worry, the future is safe. While in the short term, I would like to believe him and respect his views, I am always worried about the future. And I believe all of us in this room, whether you are suppliers of carbon black, customers or competitors, we all need to collectively have a little bit of sense of worry. And that worry stems from the fact that the rate at which the technology is progressing in the world. There is everything that can be disrupted today is getting disrupted. By something or the other we never expected is likely to disrupt that. And that's the unknown future that we constantly live in. When shale gas came, there was one kind of disruption to the oil industry. When the regulations of bunker fuel changes, there's another kind of threat in oil industry. When people talk about long supply chain on the supply of carbon black oil, feedstock, this is a different kind of threat. When you talk about coal tar being a substitute for Carbon black feedstock, conventional ones in China and other parts of the world. There's a different kind of emotion that comes in. When we look at our customer segment, our customer to start with, if we talk about automobiles, we find everything in automobile is changing. Driverless car, electric car. And its implication for the future we do not know. We talk about Internet of Things. I met a telecom company CEO recently and we were talking about it. In an emerging market like India, he told me, about 30,000 JCBs, those huge machines that work on construction sites, they are connected by Internet of Things to a central server, continuously monitoring how the equipment is performing and leading to a different mode of preventive maintenance, a different skill requirement for preventive maintenance. We talk about 3D printing. Perhaps everything in 3D printing could be a source of threat, including to tire companies. 3D printing has a potential that we have not realized fully. Earlier, we always believed putting up large-scale plants gave us scale economy. The beauty of 3D printing seems to be that a single print piece of thing that you get printed, its economic cost could be equivalent to anything produced in a scale industry. So the scale as an advantage could vanish, and there could be hundreds of neighborhood entrepreneurs who with a sophisticated 3D printer can produce anything, including tires, Dr. Mukhopadhyay perhaps. Now, when you look at those changes happening all around us, some very evident, some discernible, some quiet, some unknown, I think there is a sense of trepidation. And that sense of trepidation needs to be there in every leader in this particular business. Trade barriers are growing. Environmental norms have been changing. Many of my colleagues from China are here. They would know about that in China much better than we do. And we experience it everywhere. We just put up a brand new plant in China that we commissioned last month. I cannot welcome my competitors to visit that. I would certainly welcome my customers to visit that state-of-the-art, wonderful plant. My colleague, Mr. Rathi, is here. We are going to soon expand Gumadipundi plant. You know, Ratiji has vigorously started work on that. But as we make those capital investment, I cannot honestly say that I do not worry for a moment. I do worry. I do worry because today no one has knowledge enough, comprehensive enough to know where from that disruption can come and what would be the magnitude of that disruption, how long can that disruption last, and how do we build capability in our people, in our partners, suppliers, to make sure that we can withstand that disruption for a reasonably long period of time. So every industry perhaps in the world is the cusp of those disruptions, and so is carbon black industry. We are a boring industry. Some people call we are a simple industry. We are a simple convergent business, bring some feedstock. Malhotra Sahib has been 55 years in the industry, sir. My age is not even 55, so I salute you and to your erudition and your experience. Now, when you compare with that kind of experience, the steady state in which carbon black industry and its technology has remained, and I'm told carbon black technology was this about 100 years ago, and it has still remained the same. We still spray a lot of water into it and still dry the same water out. Nobody has figured out why we should be doing that. Natarajanji, I hope you are listening to this. This is the biggest challenge of sustainability that the carbon black industry has. We pour water, we dry it. And this is a message, and I will close with that. This is not a time for speech. I could not stay for 2 days. I had to go back, so I apologize. But thank you for giving me this time. But the last thing I want to say is, and I have said that on many conferences earlier, and if it does not happen at a world stage, it can happen in Asia Pacific, certainly. And congratulations on your 25 years. But I think on the 25th year, if we can go back from this conference with one resolve and with some concrete action agenda, it will be wonderful. And that has to be, how can competitors and partners collaborate to address the issues of sustainability? Because I do not think challenges of sustainability can be individual company agenda. It has to be an industry-specific agenda. An industry-specific agenda can come together only if industry leaders do make a deliberate commitment to set aside narrow interest of competition to serve the largest interest of humanity and society and the development goals that Millennium Development Goals has set. I would urge that 25 years tribute can be best achieved if we can figure out, at least Asia Pacific can take a lead in the subject of how do we come together to address the challenges of sustainability. Congratulations to the organizing committee for a fantastic show as always. Thank you all for coming from long distances. Do enjoy. Chennai is always a very hospitable city, excepting when it rains heavily here. And I hope it doesn't rain heavily and you enjoy yourselves. And thank you for having me here, and cheers.